The following is a follow-up to my previous podcast and blog. How has this social disaster come to be? Can it be undone? My previous podcast regarding the deplorable conditions David Weiss life on Queen tenants are living with shows how tenant rights and accountability from the landlords are almost non-existent. I can assure you that Westwood Holdings are not the only culprits. Ontario is plagued with numerous apartment buildings that are in need of major repair and maintenance. It is not only a Toronto problem. It exists province-wide. In defense of the landlords, they are also victims of problematic tenants. The percentage of people who are withholding or simply not paying rent has escalated during the pandemic and is now a post-pandemic after effect. The Landlord-Tenant Board is and has failed both the landlords and the tenants. The number of landlord and tenant filings grows daily. Presently in the 40,000 case range and climbing. On CBC News, Thursday, May 4, 2023, the Ontario Ombudsman appeared stating that the minimum wait for a hearing at the LTB is 8 months to a year. Currently there are over 39,000 cases in the backlog queue. Adjudicators are appointed by the provincial cabinet, and since the pandemic first began, half those seats are vacant. Another prime example of the Ford government's habit of just do it attitudes. Makes one ask oneself, what the frack were they thinking or drinking? Further proof of the lack of concern the Ford government shows for both tenant and landlords alike. Here is an example of the reality that mislead decision has created. Picture the following. A tenant files for a hearing today. They submit the proper paperwork. They now have to wait for a year, perhaps longer, for the proceedings to begin. Depending upon the severity of the complaint, the case could become quite lengthy. Many cases take a further 6 months or more to reach adjudication. Or this. A landlord has a tenant who has a steady stream of people coming and going, obviously a drug dealer. Other residents are fearing their safety. Meanwhile, because of the actions of this tenant, other residents are now withholding their rent till the problem is resolved. With the ridiculous backlog, do you honestly believe that the landlord will receive much needed assistance before his property is destroyed and his finances tossed into chaos? Now, tell me, how realistic is it that? How can a fair and proper resolution be reached after such delays? What if it is a case whereas the landlord is making the tenant's life horrible? Or vice versa? Such a long term gives squatters, rent withholders, drug dealers and bad landlords enough time to destroy property and lives. If a landlord with complete disregard for regulations is purposely doing whatever they can to force a tenant out, they will most certainly succeed long before the case is heard. It has only been a few days before I went public with the Life on Queen tragedy. For a tragedy it is for the affected people, families who are tenants of Westwood Holdings. Surprisingly, on Friday, May 5, 2023, Westwood Holdings gave a written notice to all the tenants stating that Briarwood Management was no longer representing Life on Queen or Westwood Holdings. Whether or not my podcast had anything to do with this news is unknown. I do not believe in coincidence, though. I also emailed the story to every news agency I could think of, as well as to the Deputy Mayor, the Premier, the MP, the MPP. And I contacted anyone else I anticipated may help the victims of landlords like David Weiss and to help both tenants and landlords province-wide. The Mayor's office explained that due to legislation they have no control over landlord-tenant disputes. That falls under provincial jurisdiction. Which again shows the insanity of all of this. Maybe I am wrong, but my common sense tells me that it is far more logical for the municipal government to have control over landlord-tenant matters. I have always been a Chevy man, so I cannot understand a Ford. When I first emailed Jennifer's plight to MPP McMahon, I received a standard reply and the recommendation and instructions to file a claim with, you guessed it, the Landlord-Tenant Board. I read the reply and started to lose hope. That is until I received a sincere reply from the Deputy Mayor stating that, although she had no jurisdiction over the matter, she was forwarding my email to Ms. McMahon and asking her to review the matter. Lo and behold, I received a second reply from MPP McMahon. This one from her assistant and much more personal than the previous form reply. They assured me that they would be contacting Jennifer via phone as soon as possible to discuss the situation. That was last Wednesday. Today being the next Tuesday, we have yet to receive a call. Mind you, Jennifer had previous commitments on Thursday and was not home throughout the day, but Friday and since then she has remained home with hope that anyone will reach out to her. The Premier's office sent a response today and surprisingly showed true concern. They have now passed this matter into the hands of the proper minister who oversees such matters. Here is Premier Ford's response. Thanks for reaching out about your wife's housing situation. I welcome your insight, as it helps guide our government when it comes to improving and developing programs. I've shared your email with the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Minister Clark or a member of his team will respond to you as soon as possible. Thanks again for contacting me. Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. Also, we received a response from the neighborhood newspaper who have stated that they will be running the story in their end of May issue. I shall withhold the name of the paper until the issue is published. It has only been a week since I first published the story. That said, we must be patient. I would rather anyone we have contacted to respond once they have reviewed the story and researched both sides. For there is more than one side to any conflict. However, in the case of David Weiss and his life on Queen buildings, I see no viable defense on his behalf. There is no excuse for intimidation, lies, or denial of repairs. Furthermore, yes, I am the separated husband of Jennifer and therefore have vested emotional involvement regarding her 9 years of continuous difficulties with Westwood Holdings and life on Queen. But, I also have a first-hand view and experience of the ongoing difficulties. Even if Jennifer was not involved, I would still write the exact same thing, as that is what I do. I speak for those who have no voice. I do my best as a lighthouse to shine a beacon of hope to guide those who believe that there is no hope. I have spoken to numerous tenants numerous times, all of which voice the same concerns. If all is investigated properly and if enough political figures and tenants raise their voices demanding not only justice, but change, then perhaps change will come to be. We, being anyone who pays rent in Ontario, need your voice. Change happens when change happens. This is a societal problem, and that means it is a political issue. Politics are governed by the mass and voices of the people. On behalf of all the seniors and fellow low or fixed income Ontario rent payers, I ask of you to leave a comment, or a simple like or share of my blogs or podcasts. Believe me, such simple gestures do make a difference. To be honest, if you wish to assist these residents in the best measure possible, then email Minister Clark, the Premier, and your local MPP. You are more than welcome to give reference to this blog and podcast. Presently, the political bandwagon is full of promises of affordable housing yet to come. Yes, that is a fantastic promise to look forward to. But what about the existing affordable housing? It is time to hold the landlords and their staff accountable for the maintenance of their properties, the right for tenants to have a kitchen and floors that are safe to walk upon. Time to hold accountable those who intimidate the elderly and emotional fragile tenants. Those who enter homes without proper notice. It is time to fix the problems in our existing housing. The building of new housing is a top priority by all means and definitely must be followed through, but our number one priority should be putting slum landlords on notice. In closing, this old lighthouse asks you to speak up. Not only on social media, but to take 10 minutes of your day to contact the politicians and authorities and have your voice make a difference. Be the change that you want to see.